Hey everybody, Jeff here. You may know me as Jeff Aaron from the Facebook groups or Penguin Harps or Penguin. As long as you know me, that's the important thing. We got a special guest here today. We're going to be doing an interview with HAL Weeks, who he's been playing Autoharp for about 33 years. He's been teaching online for the past 4 years or so. He's the man behind the scenes and the owner, creator, however you want to put it, for Stalking the Wild Autoharp on YouTube, which I've personally found very valuable. There's a lot of good lessons in there, good interviews in there, good playing in there. It's just, if you haven't checked it out, you definitely need to, because it's spot on when it comes to learning the Autoharp. Hal was the runner-up at the Walnut Valley International Festival in, I believe it was 2016, 18. He told me, I don't remember. We'll get into that talking though. But anyway, without further ado, here is Mr. HAL Weeks. Hello, Hal.
Hi there. How's it going, Jeff?
Good. How are you doing today?
Good. It's fun to be on the. I'm not working today. You get to do the work today.
Exactly. You're on the other end of the camera, so to speak.
Yeah, which is a new experience for me.
Well, hey, good. Yeah, I wanted to get you on here. I watched the interviews that you've done with various people, and I thought, well, why doesn't somebody interview Hal? I'm sure he has a lot to say and a lot to enrich us with. So that's why I reached out to you.
I can be very enriching, I'm sure.
Excellent. Well, we're going to start with the general questions, and we may get off onto some tangents, but who knows? We'll just see how it goes. For starters, I've already mentioned you've been playing for 33 years, so that kind of takes care of question number one. But tell us about that. I mean, what brought it on? How do you pick up the Autoharp to start playing?
I started out as a classical musician, specifically composition and theory, and was starting to get disillusioned with it. I'd been doing it for 12 years or something, pursuing that all through high school and college, and was starting to get kind of disillusioned with my prospects, and I listened to the wrong teachers who gave me advice that said, you can never make a living composing music. You're going to end up teaching theory. And I was like, no! And because that's what they were doing, and that's all they knew was teaching music theory and teaching composition in college. And this was right before. Hello.
Sorry, that's my hello.
We have one here too. They were teaching music theory, and that's what they knew how to do. And this was right before the days of MIDI. Electronic music and being able to hook synthesizers together and compose really fully orchestral music right there in your living room. And this is how television and film scoring is done these days. Anyway, we didn't anticipate that, and I didn't really follow through. And just said, I'm not going to listen to these guys. I'm going to go to a different school or something like that. I just left and dropped the whole thing and said, there's got to be another way. And there was, and it was in the Autoharp. I had seen Autoharp as a kid and not played, but just seen one. And then about, how'd this go? About this time, I started working in a record store, and we had a Bonnie Phipps album. And I picked up Bonnie Phipps's album and listened to that and listened to it and listened to it. And it turns out my mom knew Bonnie Phipps because my mom was a children's librarian, and Bonnie Phipps was in the kids' music circuit in Colorado. And so I said, I'm going to do some folk music. My dad had a love of classical music, but he also had a love of folk music. And I said, I'm going to learn how to play this thing in traditional means. And so I picked one up, and it was like coming home. I had been a musician at that point for 15 years, and it seems like I could play it right out of the box, just from my piano background and everything. And so I didn't really have a huge learning curve that I went through with it. It went fast, and within a year I played on the radio, and it just took for me. And got into diatonic playing, did that for 5 years, went back to chromatic playing, and it kind of stayed with the chromatic. So that's how I got into it, and I'm still doing it, and I had no idea what it would lead to, and is still leading to.
Well, it's obviously opened up doors for you to actually leading into our next subject is that you're working now for Pete Daigle and Daigle Autoharps.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And obviously your playing opened the door for you. And I can tell by the way that you respond to your videos and things. You definitely enjoy what you're doing there.
Oh, yeah.
That in there. And that's so important, I think, when you're working, for those who are able to work right now, especially to be enjoying what they're doing.
I love it. I love it. And first of all, where else can you go to have a job in Autoharpdom?
Absolutely, you're right. If you're not working in a music store doing repairs or something, you're actually building them. There's not a whole lot of, like you said, there's not a whole lot of jobs out there, or different, should we say, crafts out there for.
Mm-hmm. Well, and while we have a number of independent luthiers in the country, they don't employ others because, the traditional way of learning how to build instruments is to do an apprenticeship, which is what I'm doing. But I got hired on as sort of the fifth person, and fifth, yeah. It's been great, and it's an Autoharp store, for goodness sake. We have everything you need for Autoharps, and people come in, just they drive up, they park, they come in, and they bring in Autoharps just out of the community. Hey, saw you were here. I've got this Autoharp that's belonged to my family for generations. I want to get it fixed up. Boom.
Right.
Where else can you do that? All the other music stores in the country, even if they're folk music stores, kind of look like, okay, yeah, we can probably fix that, and we know everything there is to know. So it's really interesting how my skill set me up for this, and I had no plan on that at all.
Right. I think everybody that's a fan of your channel has seen, I think it was the old Chroma Harp that was brought in that you made a special video about. I think it was a Chroma Harp that was like ancient that you had to work on.
Oh, the one with the weird tuners?
Yes.
At the bottom? Yeah, that thing was really interesting, and it I got to tune it up, and it actually tuned really smooth. It was actually like a really nice design. It just would have required special strings, and nobody was going to carry those. It was a prototype.
Right.
And it ended up out in the world, and it had the original strings on, and probably will always have those strings on, because where else are you going to get strings? Greg Schreiber could make strings for it. Right. That's one piece, but it would cost a lot of money. Sure. And probably the tonal characteristics of that particular harp would not warrant the money that you'd have to spend to put strings on it.
Well, I'm sure it's probably, like you said, a prototype that's going to be a one of a kind. So there was something about it that made them not choose to make that in large scale. So,
right.
I can understand that. So for to have only, you said you're one of five at that store. That right there should tell you something, because you have a place that manufactures auto harps. They build them, they fix them, and repair them. and you're one of the lucky 5 or 6 that get to work in a place like that. I mean, that's got to make you feel special right there.
Oh, yeah, it does. It does. And on a personal note, one of the most flattering experiences was when I was there for the first summer. I had arrived, and Pete Daigle has a monthly jam session. This is, of course, before the shutdown and everything, but he has a monthly jam session for the community where people just come and hang out and play songs for a couple of hours. And he introduced me as his friend. And to me, that was just really touching, because like, wow, I'm Pete Daigle's friend.
All kind of honor.
Yeah, and I am, and he is, and we all are now. And one of the cool things, or another cool thing that happened was meeting John and Greg, who are the other luthiers there at Daigle Auto Harps. Pete is the face of Daigle Auto Harps. He's the one that people know and see. But Greg and John exist behind the scenes, and they are the real powerhouses of the building process. John has been with Pete since the beginning, and people don't know him. They don't see him. He likes it that way. But all those Daigle Auto Harps that are out there floating around, he built. And he and Pete built them. And then they added Greg, I think about 6 years ago. And all those auto harps, Greg builds the bodies. He builds the wooden box part. And then John does the finishing work. He sprays the finish and does the cord bars and everything like that. And so these guys are really, really involved in the building of auto harps. John plays the auto harp some. Greg doesn't play the auto harp. And yet he builds a fantastic auto harp. Greg plays bass, and he builds luthier basses there in the shop. He recently appeared in an interview in the Auto Harp Quarterly, and people got to see his face and learn a little bit about Greg, who has built all of these auto harps and all of the beautiful harps that come out of there. These two guys, and now me, have worked on. And Pete, being the face, he's so involved in administrative and taking the phone calls and answering questions, and then he does the fancy inlay work. If there is work to be done with abalone or stuff like that, he does that work, and he does warranty work when something comes in that needs to be fixed on an auto harp. He will take that stuff on, and he of course has designed all the auto harps, and so he does all the draftsmanship that's involved in laying those out. And he's working on a new harp, and I'm not at liberty to say what it is, but it's going to come out here pretty soon, and that's kind of cool. And I've watched that develop now for the past couple of years. And so they're busy guys. I mean, it's an incredibly busy shop, and it's sometimes it's a little chaotic because of the way the workflow works. But Keith, his son, works there too, and he handles Oscar Schmidt repairs. People are constantly sending in Oscar Schmidt auto harps to repair, and we sell new Oscar Schmidts that are upgraded a few steps so that they're a little bit better than the way they come from the factory, and somebody has to do that work. So Keith does that work, and I do some of that work. And so I mean, lots and lots of really interesting things, and interesting people come in all the time,
Not bad.
and it's an interesting community to be plugged into and to watch.
And in doing so, you've actually got to build yourself an Autoharp that you have now.
Indeed. Yeah.
That's an awesome aspect of working in a place like that.
Yeah, pretty nice little perk. I tell you what. I was playing harps, like when I teach my lessons, I teach online. It's during the day while I'm at Daigle Harps. I will go out the front of the workshop is a little music store. It's a folk music shop, and they sell guitars and ukes and et cetera, et cetera. And so I will go out into the store and I will sit down with my laptop, much like I'm doing here, and teach a lesson via Skype. And I was grabbing harps that were there in stock. And during the summers, Pete would pack up all those harps and take them out to a festival. Like he'd go to Winfield, and it's suddenly like, no harps. What am I going to teach with? So I'd grab like an Oscar Schmidt and I'd teach lessons with the Oscar Schmidt. Not a problem. But I wanted a harp that would just live there, that I didn't have to carry back and forth to work.
Right.
And so, in playing, I spent several months playing this one particular Desert Rose Autoharp, and I was really sort of amazed at its tone quality and everything. And so I was like, Pete, this is an awesome harp. I want to get one so I can just keep it here, and then we'll always have one here in the shop if you want to show it. And he's like, well, that's part of your job, is to learn how to build these. So, go ahead, just build one for yourself. And so I went through all the steps. Obviously, I had a lot of help because I didn't know how to cut out an Autoharp frame yet, and so my frame got cut out as part of a batch of frames with 16 others that Greg was, every couple of weeks he starts a new batch of harps. And so mine was one of those. And so he showed me how to make the cuts, and he made some of them and I made some of them. So I participated in the building of this series of harps. It's not like, oh, here's my harp. Now I'm going to go over and do this to it. Now I'm going to take my harp over here and do this to it, which is what everybody imagines. But auto harps don't get constructed that way in our shop. They are, it's more like
assembly line.
Yeah, and one day Greg will cut out 16 frames, and then by the end of the day he's got the base part, the tailpiece glued onto them, and then that has to set up overnight, and then he comes in and he does the next step to them. Meanwhile, he's got harps that are halfway done that he works on while those are setting, through those steps. And so the auto harp kind of gets a particular auto harp kind of gets lost in the shuffle. It's just in there with everything else, and it's got to hit its stages. And I did all the stages at one point or another on all those harps. And so in amongst all of that was my harp. And my harp had HAL's harp written on the frame in pencil, which is now somewhere inside of it. Eventually, when they glued the little label inside the sound hole, I took it around and I got everybody to sign it. So it's signed by all my teachers, which is really special to me, because you do realize that you've got a master standing there watching over your shoulder while you're working with this particular tool, and that's very intimidating. And it's also very special and cool because they're very forgiving, and they're very knowledgeable about what they do.
Is there anything that's different about that one model that makes it your signature model type thing?
No, I made it stock. I made it as stock as I possibly could because, number one, when I'm teaching and I'm playing it, I'm representing Oscar. I'm representing Daigle Harps.
Right.
And so I wanted it to be just a standard model. And also because I'm teaching, I want it to be as standard as possible so that it's as close as possible to what other people have that they're learning on, rather than I have harps that I use that are all kind of pimped up. They're all souped up, and special stringing schedules, and I play the Prism Harp and all kinds of things like that. So no, on my Desert Rose, the only thing that is different is that there's signatures on the label inside, and that's not something that we typically do. But mine has signatures of everybody, and John drew a little mouse on the label inside mine. Here comes a big truck. We'll let that roar by.
Well, you actually brought up a very good segue into a great question. Is tell us about your involvement with the Prism Harp and how that came to be.
When I went back, remember I said I played diatonic for a lot of years. When I started going back into the schools, I was hired as the music guy in a traveling performing theater company. And I would sit to the side and provide sound effects and music and narration for the play that was being done. And we would tour this to the schools. And it was, we did it a lot. We were doing like 20 shows a month, something to the tune of that. And so I had to play chromatic, because in order to make all the sound effects, all the creepy sounds, the monster sounds, the machine sounds, the alien sounds, the spaceship sounds, all of this, I had to have an instrument to do that. And the diatonic just doesn't have all the capabilities that way that for storytelling that a chromatic does. And so I used a chromatic harp, and I had to play a lot of rock and blues numbers and rap as part of what I was doing with the music to these shows. So I learned to play blues, and blues involved on chromatic Autoharp, the way I learned, instead of, we usually play with 3 chord bars when we're playing basic folk stuff, it involved 18 chord bars to do all of these different sounds. And when I met Todd Crowley came to Arizona as part of a festival that we did down there, and he was touring with his Autoharp petting zoo, which was something like 45 luthier Autoharps. Wow. And in meeting Todd, we got to talking about certain players like Marty Schumann and Mark Faculty, who had developed Autoharps that were what were called tandem bar harps, which meant you push 2 buttons at once to get a simple chord, like a C major chord. Well, why would you push 2 buttons when you can only push 1 button? Well, because there's a lot more combinations of 2 buttons on a 21 bar harp than there are 1 button combinations. There's only 21 of them. And so with a little bit of ingenuity, you can develop systems of doing other chords. And going back to my composing days, I knew what these chords were because I played piano. And I knew what major 7ths were and minor 7ths and sus4s and add 9s and minor 6s, et cetera, et cetera. So I knew what to do with them, and I knew that I was stuck in sort of a rigid space without those chords. And so I was like, oh, I could really use those. And so he came up with a system that had a lot of chords, and it was not the first harp that had done this, but the other harps in previous designs, like Bud Taylor's jazz harp, for example, fantastic thing. But in every key, the buttons were in a different order. On the Prism, the buttons are all in the same order. Just like on a regular Autoharp, every key plays the same.
Right.
And so even though you're pushing two buttons at once, it's all familiar because, you know, you reach out like this, and there's that major seventh that you're used to playing, and it's there for every chord. So there's a uniformity to it, which is brilliant. And not only that, but it gave me the Prism open chords like a diatonic. You do it differently, but it gives you that sound of the sort of open halos around the notes. And diatonic open chording is a little bit like putting the pedal down on the piano. Everything kind of starts ringing over and smooths out, and that's what happens on a Prism as well, only it's got 5 keys instead of 2 keys, and it's got all these other chords that you don't have on a standard Autoharp or on a diatonic unless you have a few color chords, and then you only have a few color chords because you're limited by the number of chord bars on your harp.
I know that has a very beautiful sound to it. There's no doubt about that.
It does, and it's been great. He invented it in 2016. No, excuse me, 2006. And it's been my main thing ever since. It's not for everybody. It is harder to play because you have to push 2 buttons at once. And you know, you want to know a good piece of chords, you know, and how they work and how they sound. But it's an awful lot of fun, and it's got 85 chords to my count. Most recently I counted through and found that it had 85 chords on it, as well as the diatonic open chording in 5 keys.
That's incredible. I mean, somebody like me, no, I know that I couldn't play it. I wouldn't even try because I don't have the dexterity in my hand that you would need to play something like that. I would have the mind, the theory background that you would need to play it, but you know, recovering from a stroke, I'm limited, so I can only play one. You know, I got to even make sure that when I just got this new Oscar Schmidt, the blue one. I think I posted on the Facebook group, and I have to put the chord bars in a certain way that's very unconventional, but I have to put them in such a way that it works for me because I know where my fingers can stretch and where they can't. And if I need to like walk down towards a chord that I know I'm going to need, needs to be the right amount of way. So but I know that that definitely would not be one for me for that reason. I watched you play it on your video. It has such a bright, such a full sound to it that, you know, in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, this is one of those I'm just going to be able to listen to. I'm not going to be able to play that one.
Part of the fullness of the sound is the Prism setup, but also I mess a lot with adding a lot more bass strings to my harp, and that has been a process of gradually adding more and more bass strings and subtracting treble strings in order to do that. And my latest harp starts on low D and it only goes up to A. And it's got like 7 more notes in the bass octave than a standard harp does. And so it is more like a guitar, although still not a guitar.
Well, what I was going to compare it to actually was the sound you get from a 12-string guitar, having like the same note from a wound string and a open string type thing. I mean, a 12-string, that's what I played when I was able to play guitar as a 12-string.
Uh-huh.
I mean, you strum just a G chord, you have everybody's attention from that point on. It's just that, that's what I heard when I first listened to you playing the Prism, is I got that same reaction. It's like, wow, you now have my attention. So, I mean, it's a lovely sound.
It is. Thank you. And I owe it all to Todd Crowley. I mean, it was a stroke of genius, and he kind of wrestled with me to get me to try it in the first place. He was like consulting with me and Will Smith while he was doing it, and he finally convinced me to set one up and do it. And I adapted within 15 minutes to the patterns involved, because they're very, very similar to the Brian Bowers setup. And that's the only arrangement that you can do it in. You can't move the chord bars around to any arrangement that you want on the Prism, because the Prism is based on the idea that you can push 2 buttons at once with 1 finger, if you so choose. So half the time I do so choose to press the button with 1 finger, but other times I don't. And I have not really figured out my fingers. They have their own logic, and they have their preferences, and it's like, okay, guys, just, you got this, just you take that information over there, you do what you need to do, and I'm not going to worry about it because I've got other things to worry about. And so they figured out their own internal logic to because there's still nobody teaching Prism, and there's not a book. And I'm probably the most advanced Prism player, and I mean, there's only like, I don't know, maybe 10 of us who play it at all, and I'm not going to write a book, because who's going to buy it? Well, I'm not going to spend hours and hours and hours and hundreds and thousands of hours writing and formatting a book like that, and I'm not going to do it. So it's one of those things that if you want to play a Prism, you kind of have to figure it out. I mean, I can teach it, but I've tried to teach it over the web like this. And okay, my Prism right now is not set up. This is it, but it's not set up as a Prism right now because I recently redid all the felts, because I redid the tuning schedule, and it's just set up as a regular chromatic right now. But if I'm showing you how I'm doing something, and I have to show you, for example, how I'm doing this.
Right.
To pump that open and closed in the back. Or if I need to show you what I'm doing with my thumb, where is my thumb? Well, it's
right.
It's under there. So now I'm going to play it for you. Yeah, right.
You need that,
and I could wear a head cam, but then there's the light problem. It's dark under there. And there's a lot that goes on there with my thumb that's underneath my fingers. And so it's really not very easy to teach via webcam. So when people ask me to do that, I just kind of go, yeah, I don't really do that.
It's definitely it's a beautiful instrument, and it's actually neat, knowing that I didn't even realize that he was the one that came up with that. I mean, I know him from our group, but I didn't realize his involvement and the leadership that he actually has. I mean, he's going to be another one that I want to interview one day. I recently moved back to Pennsylvania. I grew up right outside of Pittsburgh, and I moved back. And I was heartbroken this year when they canceled the Mount Laurel Festival. I'm like,
have you ever been to it?
I have not. This Thanksgiving will only be a year that I started playing. So I missed out on all the festivals last year, and that was going to be the first one I went to, and then they canceled. I mean, I was heartbroken. But in a normal year, do you visit, like, do you have some that you normally visit and others that, well, if it's close by, I'll go?
Well, I've been to California Autoharp Gathering the most, and have not been there since. Well, I haven't been on staff teaching since 2008, so it's been quite a while. And I was scheduled to be there this year as a teacher and performer, and then got canceled. I don't really get. I went to Northwest Autoharp Gathering because I was here. That one happens, in my neck of the woods, as does Seattle Autoharp Week. But in being a teacher, teaching so many people just online, I don't need to go out to those things in order to teach. And while I used to really dream about going to those things, Winfield, same thing. I don't really do that well on the road. It's a hardship. Winfield is extremely hot. And there's all kinds of I was walking around in the campgrounds there. This was 2018 was the year that I went. And I had always wanted to go to it. And I lived in Denver for 50 years. And it was just one state over. And I never got there. Because I was involved in doing stuff in the schools. And the schools started in September. And so I needed to be where I was. Right. And so I never got to go to that one. And so 2018 was the first year I got to go. And I found myself almost having heat stroke, walking around. And I have some blood pressure issues, and found that it was this is not good. This is not good. So I didn't really do all that well in that environment. And when I was a younger person, I would have been all about it. And probably if I had gotten that in my blood and really got all the gear together, people go camping there and they have everything figured out. You see people, with wading pools and squirt guns and super soakers and all kinds of things to develop, and not to mention that, but then there's tornadoes that have come through certain years, and then there's the mud and all of this. And some people stay in town or in another town at a hotel, a motel with air conditioning. And it's that's more my speed, but I can't afford that. Right. So, Mount Laurel is just, I can't afford to get there. It's too far away. That's a trip for you. And no, I have not made it my habit to go to those things, and I really enjoy them. But also I'm learning this, and that is that when I am on staff and I teach workshops, and then they want you to perform. They want you to do a set. And while for years and years and years I did do that, now I don't do it very often. And so it's a lot of work for me to work up a set of material, an hour long, 45 minutes long, to work up, and it makes me nervous. It makes me really nervous. So it's I've got a good job building auto harps and teaching and doing my little Stalking the Wild Auto Harp videos, and so I'm largely content to do that. And it would take a lot to drag me out and get me to go do one of those things at this point. And I was scheduled to do CAG for the first time in 11 years or something this last summer, and that ended up not happening. And so I kind of went, you know what? When it happened, I was sorry that it happened, that they couldn't do it, but there was a little part of me that went,
kind of relieved a little bit.
Now I don't have to learn all those Beatles songs.
It's funny you mentioned the Beatles. I've just really started listening to them recently. Okay, I am 50 years old, and I spent most of my life not liking the Beatles. I always had this thing I think what his potential was. But I've recently, within the last probably 6 months, I've been listening to a lot of them. And I've earned a new respect for them. I really have. Just watching the interviews and just learning what they were about. they were exactly what they were. They were definitely a phenomenon. I mean, they hit the world with a storm that was unlike anything else I've seen.
They were just right on time, right people in the right place. That's for sure. And excellent songwriters.
Oh, Lennon McCartney, I've watched several interviews with Paul McCartney talking about those sessions. He said they never got together and left empty-handed. They always had a couple songs written every time they would get together in order to write songs. I mean, that was the purpose of them getting together. They always came out with songs, and they were always hits. It's just amazing what they did. I mean,
yeah,
it's incredible. But back to the festival thing. I mean, one thing I've noticed is, I mean, the festivals aren't cheap. I mean, they're very expensive just to attend, let alone the lodging and everything like that. So I can see where if you had to travel across the country, your airfare or whatever, then getting a car there or whatever, and I mean, you could run into the thousands of dollars per festival very easily. I mean, without blinking an eye. And I mean, most people I know, myself, I couldn't. There's no way I could do that, more than once a year. If that makes sense.
They are incredibly fun. And the times I've gone to CAG, California Autoharp Gathering, just to be there, kind of help out a little bit. Like one year he assigned me the job of filling the ice chests. Each day I would go around. There were 5 or 6 ice chests around the grounds that were filled with water, bottled water and ice. And each morning I would go around and I'd get an ice chest and I'd walk back to the kitchen and dump it out and put in new ice and new bottled water and take it back and leave it there and then get another one. So I'd make these rounds of about 6 ice chests each day. And that was my little contribution. And, but just to be able to hang out and kind of do what we're doing here, which is just visiting and play some auto harp with people and meet some of the people and the faces and the names that I've known in the community for years. And we're talking going back to the 80s in some cases and never actually met in person. It's like, finally, and you feel like these people are your family and you've never met them.
Things. I mean, that would be one of the best things for me is to actually meet and put faces to the names and things like that. No matter what it is, I enjoy doing that.
Well, and it's really wild because the auto harp has been a community since like the beginning, since probably what I put it back to is the Auto Harpaholic magazine. When Becky Blackley was first compiling it all and putting everybody together, and I was receiving that magazine, I started to see the names: Karen Mueller, Charles Whitmer, Tom Schrader, et cetera, et cetera. And so those people have been forces in the auto harp community. Kathy Bertel, forces in the auto harp community all along, and to finally meet them.
Right.
It's cool, and it's not just the luminaries, but all the folks are just there's just folks, wonderful, sweet people, and I'm meeting you today for the first time, and I've been corresponding with you a little bit on and off over the past couple of years, and I guess a year. You said you've only been
coming up on a year. You actually did another great segue into a question. Do you have a role model when it comes to the auto harp, or your biggest stroke brain, I forget words, your biggest influence on you?
Well, Todd Crowley has done an awful lot for the auto harp community, sort of in a modest way. He has given away so many harps to people, including me, and helped so many people learn how to build and set, how to tinker with their harps and come up with the Prism, as well as several other designs that he has fleshed out. And then he bought like 45 luthier Autoharps, and he toured them around the country, going to festivals, not just Autoharp festivals, but he went to a lot of folk festivals, especially in Canada, with that setup. And then he diversified and turned it into the musical petting zoo.
Yeah.
And he's in order to fund that, he sold off a lot of those luthier harps and turned it into something more diverse. And the whole idea was, come in and get your hands on an instrument and mess around with something that you haven't messed around with, and learn to play. So there's that. Pete Daigle, who is administering the Autoharp Angels, which is a charity where people are donating their harps for people who don't have harps and want harps and can't afford them. And he administers that by housing all those harps right there in the shop. We have a huge rack of, there must be 100 Autoharps in there, and they are not necessarily playable yet.
That was actually my question. I mean, he actually works on them and makes them playable to be able to send to people. Is that correct?
Yeah, when people apply for an angel harp, as we call them, Autoharp Angels, we like to send them a 21 bar. And so if somebody has contributed a 15 bar Autoharp, we like to get a 21 bar assembly on it. So that we can send it out and make sure it's otherwise playable. And we try to provide them with a tuner and a tuning wrench and such, so that they can do that. And this is something that, I mean, people are probably going to ask about it now that I'm talking about it, which is great. And if you are interested in this is something new, is please don't just send us harps out of the blue. Because not all auto harps are viable to be sent out as an angel harp. And right now we really like to accept 21 bar harps so that we don't have to convert them before sending them out. So a lot of times people will just send us 15 bar harps, and those are the ones that tend to pile up. And while we do get around to converting some of them, we have sort of a backlog of 15 bar harps that have to be worked on, and plenty of people wanting to send in 21 bar harps. Right. They decide they want, they might decide they want to get a Daigle Harp, and they get a Daigle Harp, and then they have this 21 bar harp that they're no longer using. And so they send it to us, and we make sure that it gets sent out to somebody who has a need. And
program, it really is. And I'll actually put the information down in the comments for that too, for people who are interested in donating, things like that too. And anything else?
If they're interested in donating, they should contact Pete Daigle first before just sending it to us. And I guess Greg Schreiber does it on the East Coast too. He's housing harps for the Autoharp Angels. It might be that Tom Pladmark is too, but check before acting. And there's information about how to apply for that on the Daigle Autoharp's website, which is autoharp.com.
Okay, I actually probably just put that link up and put any questions or anything related to go there, because I'm sure that will open the door for talking to Pete about whatever type of harp they have and want to send in the of it. I'm sure they can all get answered there. So that's probably the best link to post.
I've been meaning to make a Stalking the Wild Autoharp about Autoharp Angels, and just have not gotten there yet. There's a lot of ideas for episodes of that show, and as it turns out, not very much time anymore to put them together. So I'm always kind of like floundering to put them together. And if I wasn't working full time, I would.
Don't complain about that.
Say what?
I said, don't complain about that.
About working full time? No complaints. No complaints at all. It's a wonderful thing, and it's great to be able to still teach as much as I do, as well as work. And it's a great sort of symbiotic relationship because, I've got a good number of students now, and every week there's somebody who says, I can't make my lesson this week. And it's like, sure, no problem. And I just keep working. I don't, I'm there at the shop and I go teach my lessons. But if somebody can't make it, I just keep working.
Right.
And it works out really well.
Kind of, in closing this up, how has the pandemic affected your internet lessons? Have they increased, decreased? How's that been going for you?
As far as my lessons go, they increased. They increased to the degree that I started losing my voice. Oh. And yeah, they more than doubled. And my understanding is that has happened to lots of at-home online teachers because now people have time. And so yeah, I've picked up work, and while a lot of people got a break, wanted or not, and got a vacation, wanted or not, I did not. My socializing like this and my online time I spent talking to people and teaching went up and up and up. And so it's been good. Better circumstances would always be desirable, but it helped me, and I didn't have to worry about unemployment because I was employed. I was overemployed, and we have gone back to work at Daigle Harps because the governor said we could. Manufacturing was one of the things that got tapped, and we work in a relatively big wood shop, and we're all 30 feet apart from each other, and sort of limit where we go and what we do when we're off work. I come home. I'm here when I'm not there. And that's the only place I go. I have not been shopping. I've not been grocery shopping in 4 months. And get all the food. We order all the food, and it gets delivered in crates. We even get produce delivered. And likely will go on doing so even after we don't have to.
I enjoyed that as well too. I like, there's a couple different chains or stores that deliver groceries, and yeah, there's a fee, but it's so convenient in doing that. It really is.
Yeah, it is. It is. I don't have a car. I don't have a vehicle, and I don't drive, and that puts a little bit of wiggle room in my budget, right, to afford things like getting food delivered, and getting groceries set down on my porch. And when I need a ride, I get a Lyft, and I can afford that now because I don't have a car.
Right. Yep. I mean, definitely not having a vehicle definitely adds to your or decreases from your outgoing expenses to where you do have that extra income. I mean, I have a vehicle, but my wife drives me. I don't drive, because of my health and everything. But I mean, I'd like to get out and walk as far as I can walk when I can too. And that's one of the things I've noticed. You haven't made any videos lately of you out walking.
That's true. That's true. I need to. I do those when I have a topic that I can just talk about and I don't have to demonstrate anything. But that is kind of cool when people do that, and I should do some of those.
It becomes more of a vlog than actually a series of Stalking Wild Autoharp vlog type thing.
One thing I noticed when I did those was that it was too bouncy. It's like, do I really sway that much when I walk? Have I got that much swagger? And people who do that regularly, they get what's called a gimbal, right? Which is it's like a shock mount thing that hold the camera on, so that it doesn't rattle up and down like that. And I don't have one of those. There's a lot of video production stuff that I don't have. And the show is low tech for sure. And compared to what some people do on their YouTubes, which is amazing, it's great, but they've got this audience that is huge,
that affords them to have all that high-tech equipment.
that affords them to have it. And by soliciting a big group like that, they get contributors, because we're all supported through YouTube by patrons and members now. And the more members you get, the more money you're making.
Well,
And when you make the money, then you want to solicit more and more to get more and more people coming in, and people can do YouTube full time, and that's a totally different discussion. But it's, I never anticipated the YouTube thing, and I love YouTube. Let me tell you, I love YouTube and the things that you can find on there, and the interesting ways that sort of fringe geeks, like me, with interesting esoteric hobbies and interests, find out that they're not so much fringe, and they find their audience and find other people who are into the same stuff, and they start watching, and suddenly these people are not outcasts, and they're not weirdos. Well, they're weirdos, but they're popular, for being different, and that's phenomenal in our world of normalcy.
I agree. I think your channel, I think that's one of the things that makes your channel stand out, is it's really down home. I mean, it's I'm not going to say it's low budget, but I'm going to say that it's basically done, and I think that's perfect for what you're trying to get across and what you're trying to show. I mean, I think it works really well for you.
That's good feedback. Thank you. I have very, very expensive high-tech cameras that give me that low-tech look.
Well, that's, for me, the cameras aren't expensive, but the batteries are just outrageous.
Yeah.
Well, we've been at this about an hour. Hal, I'm going to let you go and continue on your day. I hope you stay well, and I do appreciate you stopping by and enlightening us with a lot of things going on in your world.
Thanks so much for having me.
Oh, absolutely. And you take care and continue to build those great harps, Mr. Daigle.
Sure thing. I will. Thanks again.
All right. We'll talk to you later, Hal. Bye-bye.
Bye. be emailing this MP3 to you, but I got to make sure it's recording in an MP3. Please tell me you have battery power. And the uni mics. No card. Aha. No memory card in this. So I got to go find a memory card now.
Take your time.
I'm glad it tells me that. So hold on for just a moment. Please hold. Your song is important to us.
I'm not pressing 1 for English, though.
The next authorized Autoharp representative will be with you in 1 minute.
You are the second in queue.
All right. What? I think the very first time that I've had this recorder for many years, and the very first time that I found it without a memory card in it. All right, let me check my levels here. Technology is a wonderful thing when it works.
Yeah, and it's a pain in the ass when it don't.
I've been struggling with learning Ableton Live, and that is like way over my head. I usually use Reaper, and that is like a little bit more my speed, although, 6-7 years ago, that was not.
Right.
Ableton is a totally different paradigm.
I've tested about all of them, used just about all of them. I mean, I still use Audacity. The final thing I do on audio recording is send it through Audacity because it's great at removing background noise versus the other ones. But I've got to where Cakewalk now, because it's free, and I mean, totally open with all the VSTs and everything. And I'm learning that, and before I thought the same thing. Just looking at it was confusing. And now it's, watched a few YouTube videos, and I'm doing things that my son was into long before I was, and I'm teaching him some things on it now. Just, hey, guess I figured out how to do this, that type of thing. So, but yeah, I like Reaper as well too. Ableton, it seems like they did that on purpose, making the learning curve so high on that, because it's like, hey, let's see how we can confuse the general public.
Well, it's just a totally different design for live performance.
Sure.
And so they've got a whole different setup, and the people who love it. But it's generating a different kind of music from those people who love it. And that music is rap and hip hop, and EDM, and
auto-tune.
And right, but at the same time, it's got a lot of cool stuff that it will do. And anyway, that's a different subject. Okay, so let me. Looks like my levels are pretty good, so I can play you something.
Okay, well, let me How I've enjoyed the conversation. If you don't mind, I want to ask you to play something for us before we leave. I know everybody's wanting to hear that.
Sure, yeah, I can do that. Hello, stranger. Put your loving hand in mine. Hello, stranger. Put your loving hand in mine. You are a stranger. Your pal of mine. Get up round her. Let a working man lay down. Get up round her. Let a working man lay down. You are around. You're all out and down. Weeping like a willow. Mourning like a dove, weeping like a willow. Mourning like a dove. There's a gal in the country that I really love. Every time I ride that 64th streetcar, every time I ride that 64th streetcar, I can see my baby just peeping through the old jail bar. She bowed her head. She waved a hand to me. She bowed her head. Waved a hand to me. I'm prison bound, wishing I was free. Hello, stranger. Put your loving hand in mine. Hello, stranger. Put your loving hand in mine. You are around. Your pal in mine. Get up, stranger. We're dropping the words all over the place. I better quit while I'm ahead.
Excellent. How did Brett Michaels say it at the Grammy Awards that one show when they messed up? It ain't perfect, but it's rock and roll.
Yep.
Very good.
I like to say close enough for bluegrass.
That's right. It's all about improv anyway, right?
That's right.
Well, I appreciate it, Hal. I've enjoyed this today, and you know, in our intro out of this again. Between you and I, I want to ask you something. Do you think that playing any instrument, be it piano, guitar, anything like that, definitely increases your ability when learning the Autoharp and your the speed in which you learn?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Because I've talked. I can't remember who it was I talked to, and they said that no, because it's total different. I mean, you know what a chord is, but you don't know how it affects the Autoharp. And I kind of disagreed with that one as well.
Yeah, I disagree too, because when you start, if you're starting cold with music and Autoharp, then half of what you have to learn is music. More than half of what you have to learn is music, and then, you know, all that stuff about rhythm and compound rhythm and what's a triplet and you know, different time signatures and et cetera. That stuff follows you from instrument to instrument to instrument, and so all of your musical knowledge, and you're used to channeling musical energy through your body and through your nervous system when you are versed at playing or singing. You know, and that's cumulative. But then when you go to a new instrument, a lot of those principles still apply, even though the mechanics of the thing don't. So yes, you have to learn the mechanics fresh. But if you had played guitar, like you'd have the right hand stuff down a lot already. You'd have to learn the left hand. But and similarly, if you've played Autoharp, then a second instrument is going to be easier.
No, I agree with that too. That actually never came up, but I definitely agree with that. I think learning an instrument, especially a stringed instrument, and how the strings respond to you, definitely gives you an advantage, so to speak. Because I think that's why. I mean, I've come a long way on the harp, and I think that's why. Because I played guitar for 35 years.
Yes.
Where I was unable to play anymore. So like finger picking, and I mean, I'll never be a melody player. I know that because I can't move my left hand as fast as I need to. But just, playing like arpeggios and stuff on the chords, it came natural because it's, the same motion, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
I just noticed that I watched one of your videos recently again. I think it was on arpeggios, actually. And you actually played a John Prine tune.
I did?
Yeah. I think you played a little bit of the Speed of the Sound of Loneliness.
No, it couldn't have been that. Couldn't be, because I don't. Now, maybe I was playing a chord progression that sounded like that, because his
sang it too.
Okay. All right. Well, the John Prine songs that I've done, Grandpa was a carpenter.
That wasn't that fast. It was a melodic song, very slow.
Huh.
And I'll have to go back and look and see what it was and let you know, because it kind of shocked me. I was a huge John Prine fan. I mean, I literally cried the day he died. I've met him.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? He meant the world to me, and it tore me up. It really did.
Yeah.
And that's, I was rewatching it. That's what I noticed. My son was in here. I was like, that's John Prine song. I didn't know Hal knew John Prine.
Yeah, I like him a lot, and I have not done a lot of his songs, because it's only in recent years that I've become more familiar with his songs.
Right.
But yeah, I like him a lot.
He was definitely an influence on me. There's not many of his songs that I don't play. Well, I didn't play on guitar, and I'm transposing them into the Autoharp. I mean, most of them are easy to play, easy chords. They're straightforward because he didn't know that many chords to begin with.
Sure.
I mean, he'll tell you the song Hello in There. He knew 6 chords, and he used all 6 chords in that song. And he said they just came in the right order. So, but anyway, Hal, I'm gonna let you run. I got chores I got to do too. So.
Yeah, I got to go fold my laundry now.
There you go. But I appreciate it, buddy. And you take care and stay healthy out there in Washington State.
My pleasure. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to upload this MP3.
Mm-hmm.
And if it is small enough, I will just attach it as an email.
Yeah,
and that depends on the size of the file as to whether or not it'll go through. And if not, I'll have to figure out another way to transfer it. Do you have a Gmail box?
I do. Oh, I have Gmail. My email's Gmail as well, too.
Do you use Google Drive?
I don't.
Okay.
I think 25 megabytes, I think, is the biggest for Google. If it's over that, let me know, because I'll have you upload to my personal server.
Okay. All right. Well, there's that. And I've never had to do Dropbox. So I know somehow I've got one, but I've never done it. I've just, I end up using Google Drive and then sharing the file.
I probably do have Google Drive. I must have it because I've downloaded stuff from it before, so I must have it.
Okay.
So just let me know if it goes through. We'll figure something out.
Okay. All I would need to do to share a Google Drive with you is have your Gmail address, and then I just share it with you, and then you get an email that says I've shared something with you. Here it is. Okay,
well, look on your messenger, because I shared mine with you right after you shared yours with me.
So probably it's on there. Okay.
Yeah, it's just Jeff.Fair at Gmail. So
sounds good.
All right, buddy, you take it easy, and thanks a lot for today.
Thanks a lot. Nice meeting you today.
You too, man.
Bye, Jeff. Bye, Jeff. Bye, Jeff.